A very good Saturday evening. Thanks for clicking on to Vogan's European Outlook. We're taking a look at the 2 metre temperatures of the GFS globally, and we do have a lot of contrast between warm and cold, as you would expect across the northern hemisphere, and that is really enhancing the jet stream pretty much hemisphere wide, not just across the Atlantic, which will affect the UK and Western Europe over the next several days, but in fact we're seeing it across the Pacific as well, because we've got two areas of very cold air coming in off the continent. So you've got one coming off Asia, you've also got another coming off North America, and the contrast between Caribbean warmth and of course maritime continental air meeting this cold polar air coming off Siberia, you increase the jet stream strength. Of course, you've got the cold as well coming off Canada and the northeastern United States. So you can see here that as we go forward, two very large twin areas of cold air coming off both continents, and that is going to increase the strength of the jet stream both over the Pacific and over the Atlantic in the coming days here. So as we skip through the next several days here, you can see here these two speed maxes coming off both Asia and off North America. That is essentially pushing some very strong winds at 40,000 feet out over the Pacific, so a very zonal jet. The big difference between the Atlantic and the Pacific is we've got a very strong area of high pressure ahead of this strong jet stream, which is essentially making it split, one arm going to the north, one arm going to the south. So we'll have a different orientation in the upper pattern across the western side of North America, but we don't have that block over Europe here. At the moment, we've got an area of high pressure that's over the British Isles, but that is going to start to collapse. It's going to get forced southwards, and that jet stream is going to win out big time as we go into next week here, and we'll get to that in just a second here. But you can see here, as I skip through the loop here, you've got the strong jet meeting the resistance ahead of it over the eastern Pacific. But if you look over towards the Atlantic here and the UK, we've got no longer a blocking area of high pressure, which means we're going to have a hose pipe of wind, rain, and increasingly deep areas of low pressure that is going to bombard the British Isles during the course of next week. So you can see here as we look at the European surface chart of the GFS that we reverse the height field over the British Isles. No longer do we have this blocking area of high pressure, and by the time we reach, this is by Wednesday at 0Z or 0Z, whatever way you want to call it, you've got a very strong 954 millibar low centred to the southeast of Iceland. Very tightly packed isobars indicating a very tight, very large wind field. Is going to bring widespread gales across the British Isles, big waves and potential coastal flooding here with lunar high tides, lunar high spring tides to the western portions of the British Isles here. So this is, I think, a potentially volatile situation as we push towards the middle part of next week. And then, of course, that system pushes through, but we're met by a series of lows that will barrel their way across the British Isles through the course of next week here. So we've got a very big flip in the weather pattern here to speak about here. Exactly how cold it's going to get or how warm it's going to get even remains to be seen. Now, despite the fact that we're going to start to introduce more Atlantic-driven air across the British Isles here, if you look at the North Atlantic sea surface temperature anomalies, they're below normal across much of the North Atlantic. So even a west or southwesterly airflow into the British Isles, that air is crossing over colder than normal waters, and of course it's the coldest time of the year for sea surface temperatures in the North Atlantic and around the British Isles. So therefore it might not necessarily be, even with a southwesterly wind flow, it might not necessarily be particularly warm. And it's going to be interesting because the CFSV2 weeklies indicate that we've got warmer than normal temperatures during the middle portion of the month. Now, the Arctic Oscillation is expected to go very strongly positive which would indicate more of a European high, North Atlantic and Greenland low and trough, which would indicate a warmer than normal pattern. But that is not necessarily the case when you've got colder than normal waters to the west and the southwest of the British Isles here. So it's going to be very interesting to see as we go forward here. I also want to take a look quickly at this is the difference in sea surface temperatures globally in the past year. And notice here the amount of blues representing colder than normal waters over the North Pacific, over of course, the central and eastern portion of the Pacific, with the impacts and the effects of the La Nina. We've got a fair amount of cooling surrounding the African continent. And of course the Atlantic as well. So it's very interesting when you compile the big picture and see that the global temperature is coming down somewhat in response, as expected from the La Nina here. So it's going to be very interesting over the next several months to see exactly what we're going to see in terms of global temperature here. So, of course, we've got the response to the solar minimum. I do believe that sudden stratospheric warming would have been a lot more prolific if it hadn't have been for the strong or moderate La Nina that was present in the Pacific. We also had warm phases of the Madden-Julian oscillation. So those two factors, the La Nina and the MJO, I believe was a counterbalance to the weak polar vortex. I think we would have had a more severe winter had it not been for these conflicting parameters that were at play. So, and I think that is another reason why once we did see the rubber band snap of that sudden stratospheric warming, it flipped very quickly because of the presence of both the warm phases, the MJO, the La Nina presence as well. I think it was like a rubber band snapping. It took a while. It took 30 days roughly from the sudden stratospheric warming when it initially took place to seeing the true response down at sea level and certainly down in the lower atmosphere. That response, I think, was delayed because of the La Nina. Had we not seen that, I think we would have had a much more prolific and longer duration cold spell, not only across Europe, but across many parts of the world. Of course, we've had a very cold winter indeed, in the very areas of Siberia that we're seeing record-breaking warmth last summer. So isn't it amazing how sometimes nature has a way of balancing things out? Folks, there's a lot of talk at the moment about global warming, about the earth overheating, and you know what? Sometimes I still question everything in terms of what to think, but it's interesting to see how nature can show that it still has control of the atmosphere, and man is not solely responsible for the warming that we have been seeing in recent times. I'm a great believer in that. And we've got things coming out about the North Atlantic, the Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation, in fact not existing. We've seen that coming out from the very person that actually declared that very phenomenon, hard word to say, and also the fact that we're seeing supposedly a weaker Gulf Stream. But we've got evidence, folks, that suggests that has been the case in the past, where we've seen the shutdown of the Gulf Stream. And of course, a lot of the day after tomorrow was based around that theory about the collapse of the Gulf Stream. Interesting times. That's it for today. Hope you have a great day. Back in the next couple of days with more. Bye for now.